Visit Sayorite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions.
Hi, I'm Eric Grant with Sayorite. In this tutorial video, we're going to show you how to make the quick and easy cushion with an irregular shaped application. We have another tutorial video and a great fabric calculator on our website that shows how to cut the fabric to size and make the quick and easy box cushion. But the calculator and that video only works for square or rectangular shaped cushions. This one is an irregular cushion and you can't use the fabric calculator for that. So you actually have to pattern it, and we'll show you how to do that in this video. Now this type of cushion does require that the corners come to a sharp point so the seam can fall right on the corner. Your corners not only need to come to a point, but your sides need to be perfectly straight. They cannot be curved. It also does require that the zipper be placed on the bottom and not in the boxing. So let's get started and show you how to make the quick and easy cushion for irregular shaped foam pieces.
Irregular shaped cushions like this are typically made by sewing boxing, or what is called facing, to a top and bottom plate. That works great, but takes a lot more effort than making it using the quick and easy way. In fact, making a cushion in this manner may save you half the time of making it the traditional way. The first step in creating this cushion is cutting the foam to the appropriate size.
In this chapter, we're going to show you how to cut the foam. What you need to know about cutting the foam for your desired project is you need to cut the foam 1/4 inch larger on all sides. Why is that? Well, the fabric will compress the foam and make it a little bit smaller. So that 1/4 inch added to all sides will hopefully result in a cushion that is very close to your desired finished size. Now let's show you how to cut foam. We've selected to use a Cushionrite premium foam from Sayorite. Sayorite also sells a Cushionrite standard foam. If you plan on using the cushion several hours a day, choose the premium because it's a high density foam. If you plan on using it maybe once or twice a week, the Cushionrite standard will work great for you. Now I'm just taking a Sharpie marker and marking a line to make an irregular cushion in any size, and then we'll cut it out. Now you can cut foam with the Sayorite blade foam saw, which has a base which makes almost perfect vertical cuts, or you can use an electric kitchen knife that you carve a turkey with. We'll show you both techniques. Now we've already cut some of this foam, and if you've noticed here, this is a 4-inch foam, and it's actually 2 sheets of a 2-inch glued together. And here's the side that has been cut. You can't even tell that it's been glued, and you can't feel a thing. So gluing foam is quite customary. So let's cut this cut with the Sayorite blade foam saw to show how it works.
If you're looking for a foam that will last for years of frequent use, you must consider the density of the foam, not the IFD. The higher the density, the longer the life of the foam. Sayorite's Cushionrite Premium is a high-density foam.
Now to use the electric kitchen knife, what I like to do is line the line up to a sacrificial table and make sure that I'm going to make a perfectly horizontal or perpendicular cut to the top of the foam, and then use some weights to hold it down. And this is not as nice, but it does work. So don't feel like you have to buy an expensive foam cutter. Keep the blade perfectly perpendicular to the tabletop, and this edge up against the tabletop, and this edge against the line. So you can see that works fairly well as well. The electric kitchen knife doesn't do phenomenal, but it works okay. If you have any inconsistencies, you can purchase this foam shaper, which is basically nothing more than just a lid with a whole bunch of holes in it with a handle, which does make it very nice. And you can actually do quite a bit of shaping with this. I just want a straight edge, so I'm just making sure that it looks nice and straight. Looks good. Now we just cut an irregular piece of foam with all kinds of corners. If you're going to follow this approach, you must have sharp corners like this. They cannot be rounded because the seam's going to fall right on these corners. Now, When you're cutting your foam to size, if you've made a pattern, you need to make each side of the foam a 1/4 inch larger than the pattern or the desired size. So that's what we are intending to do here, even though this is just a random piece of foam that we're going to show you the process to do. Just make sure that your foam is a 1/4 inch larger here, 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 and here on all sides.
In this chapter, we're going to pattern the foam that's necessary for irregular shaped cushions done the quick and easy way.
Now, patterning for an irregular cushion like this for the quick and easy approach requires Durascrim pattern material and a spray glue. We're going to use Super 77 by 3M. But first, here's our foam piece. We need to determine, well, your foam piece would have a top and a bottom that you'd have to have correct. We're going to call this the top, and here we're going to call this the front side, so I'm going to put an F there. On this side, we'll call this the bottom. The top side of your foam must face the pattern material, and you need to have enough to wrap to the edges, about 1 inch or 2 inches past the edges. Having more is fine, you can trim it away later. So let's cut this to the general size, making sure that we have enough to wrap around the sides. So now I'm going to take my spray glue and I'm going to spray the sides of the foam, and I know this gets spray glue on the foam, but that's no big deal, and a little bit of the Durascrim that is resting on the side. And we do this to all the sides. Now your job is to fold the Durascrim up to the edge of the foam and make sure that it hugs it tightly, like that. And when you get to the sides and the corners, we're going to create a dart. So pull this side up, stick it down, and then fold the material so that it comes in contact right at the corner of the foam, and then press it together like that. Okay, so that's perfect there. And we're going to do this all around the foam. Side goes up, make sure it's tight to that side, tight to the corner, and then this corner goes in and creates a beautiful corner like that. Okay, going to do this all around and we'll show you what's next. I'm going to trim some of this away because there's a lot of excess here. I'm going to leave at least 1 inch hanging over the edge of the foam. So I'm going to grab my clear acrylic ruler. I have 2 of them. One of them is newer and one of them is older. I'm going to use the older one here because I'm going to use a marker against it and it gets marker all over it. So I love the clear acrylic ruler. I suggest you have more than one. So we're going to make sure that this is going straight across the foam. Now if your foam were slightly crooked, I would make the ruler crooked, and it is slightly crooked, so I'm not going to have it up against the tabletop. And I'm going to strike a line that goes past this corner but goes all the way to the table and stops. So right there, and then I'm going to flip this around and we're going to do the same thing on this side. Now this line should fall right on top of that other line. So to the tabletop and up top like that. Okay, so that corner is marked. We're going to do that to all these corners, and then we'll show you what's next. So we're going to take out this excess. Be sure you follow the foam, don't put your clear acrylic ruler on the tabletop unless it's totally perpendicular, the edge of the foam, I should say. So now what we're going to do is we're going to mark the edge of the foam this way and put a few tick marks right at the edge of the foam. But at the corners, we want to have a mark there and here. So we're going to do that all the way around the piece of foam. Now we're going to flip it. And this is the top. And so what I'm going to mark is top, and that way we know that this is the outside surface and this is the front. So we're going to mark it F there. So that kind of matches everything. So now we can remove the pattern from the foam. And the foam would be a little bit sticky, but it's really not very sticky at all. So that's the neat thing about using the 77 or the Super 88 if we still carry that. It's a little bit cheaper and doesn't work as well, but it does work. Now our marks are on the other side, and this is the top surface. So we flipped it over, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a straight edge and we're going to mark these lines, and we're going to mark directly on the lines. So just like that. If your lines are slightly off, like this one looks like it's off, it probably isn't. We're going to go from corner to corner and fair it up. So that's good like that. Let's do this one. See where the lines are falling. There and there. It's more important to follow the lines at the corner than it is any lines in the middle. So see how this one's off slightly and that one's off? The important ones are this one and that one. Before we cut this out, we need to account for some shrinkage. We want it to shrink up a little bit. Now, if you measure our foam, let's see if I can do this here. You can see it's 4 inches, 4-inch thickness. So which means that this is 4 inches if you measure it. Yep, 4 inches. We'll need to subtract a 1/4 inch from each corner to compress the foam for a nice tight fitting cover. However, each corner has a different angle, so we just can't mark a 1/4 inch inside the lines. We need to do this mathematically to account for each corner's angle. But don't worry, you don't have to use math. We'll show you how you can reduce each corner by simply measuring. So 1, 2, 3, 4 1/4. I'm going to put this clear acrylic ruler on that 4 1/4 inch line and make sure that it's parallel with the line that we struck. We're going to take this and we're going to put a line like that. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to do the same thing. This is going to cause some reduction. So 1, 2, 3, 4 1/4. Make sure this is parallel with this line here, which it is. It's right on there. And we're going to do this. So here's a different wedge. So what I'm going to do is the same exact thing again. Put this on here so it's parallel. 4 1/4, because we have 4-inch foam, we're adding a 1/4 inch. And I'm going to strike a line here. And then I'm going to come over here. 4 1/4 parallel with this line. And you want to do this for all the corners. And the clear acrylic ruler is very important for this kind of job. It basically puts an X right there. And you'll notice that these will be different in the end. So we're going to do this to all the corners and we'll show you what's next. Okay, we have the X marked for each one of the corners, and look how far this X is compared to this 90-degree X over here. This is about a 1/4 inch total. But every one of them is slightly different depending on the gap of the corner. This one, look how far out it is. So that's why we do this. Now what we want to do is now we want to put our clear acrylic ruler parallel to this line. So, and on the X. So I'm going to make sure that we're parallel. And I'm going to make sure I'm on the X. Like that. And then I'm going to strike a line from the X all the way down the side like that. So parallel to this line and on the X. And again, without a clear acrylic ruler, this would be a hard job. But with it, it's easy. So there's our reduction for this corner. Now let's show you this corner, this 90-degree, well, let's show you this one over here, because this one's different than this one. So if I go to this one and make it parallel to that edge, let's put it like this. And notice this one's basically, it's right where it's supposed to be there. So I don't even have to mark a new line there. And that's perfect like that. So we're good there.
We will repeat these steps for all the corners. We'll not be showing them.
Okay, unfortunately we're not done. We need to now add a 1/2 inch from this new line that's on the inside. So for this one, I'm going to put my clear acrylic ruler on the new line that we just struck and we're going to strike another line here. Okay, and then new line that we just struck at a 1/2 inch. Make sure you're parallel with it.
I neglected to say what this line is, but this is our
Like it here.
1/2 inch seam allowance.
Okay, so now this one has 3 lines. This is going to be the cut line that we do. For this one over here, 1/2 inch is our original line, so we don't have to make a new line here. This is a 1/2 inch and that's a 1/2 inch. This one, remember we didn't need to add any for this one because it basically ran into the X, but we need to add the 1/2 inch to it though. So we're going to put this on a 1/2 inch, we're going to mark a line here, and then we're going to put this on a 1/2 inch here. I hope this is not too confusing, but this is how you get perfect corners mathematically, and that will be our cut line. So we're going to do that for all corners. This one looks like it's already a 1/2 inch. Yep, I'm sure it is. I can see it. So now we're going to cut on the outside line. If you've made an outside line, that is the line that you are to cut on. And this one's pretty easy because there's only 2 lines. And then we'll cut on this line. Now we didn't add any seam allowance at the bottom because we want it to compress. So even though we're going to be taking up a 1/2 inch of fabric, we didn't add any there. This one may be a little bit confusing, so we'll cut it out next. It's the outside line. And to cut on the edge, since there's not a line there, you just basically go over like that, even though there's no line marked there. So we're going to do this to all the corners, and we'll show you what's next.
To clarify, the line on the X is our stitch line, and the line to the outside is our 1/2 inch seam allowance or cut line. We'll use the pattern and cut the decorative fabric to size and then sew it up.
This is our pattern. The top side is facing up, which means this is the outside surface of the fabric. This fabric is Sunbrella upholstery fabric. Doesn't have a right side or a wrong side. It will after we're done patterning. And this is our front, so we want the lines to be perpendicular to this edge here. I'm just going to eyeball it for the most part. This is just a cushion to show you how to do something. It's not necessarily for a job or anything. I'm going to lay it out as flat as possible on there. And then I'm going to put some sandbags that we made. We could have a video showing you how to make these. I've been using them for years without issue. They never leaked or anything. And then I'm going to take my black scribe ball and my long ruler, and I'm going to put it up against the edge. I'll show it over here so you can kind of see it better for the camera. I put it up against the edge of the pattern material, and then I can mark along that edge. Now here, for each one of these, we already added our 1/2 inch for our seam allowance in the appropriate spot, so I just trace around each one of these corners, and we will do this all around the perimeter of this pattern, and we'll cut it out. But we're not going to cut it out with scissors, we're going to use a hot knife. Okay, since this is a fabric that'll unravel, it's a synthetic, we're going to put the tempered cutting glass underneath it, and we can go ahead and move the pattern since we have it traced. And we do want to mark that this is the forward edge, so I'm going to put an F basically in my seam allowance, and this would be the right side, so I'm going to put R-I-G-H-T lightly in the seam allowance. Even though we didn't add seam allowance, we're going to be using seam allowance, so don't let that worry you like, I didn't add any seam allowance. No, you did not. We want nice compression. So we're going to cut the corner, and I usually stop at the right before I reach the corner junction, and I go the other direction like that. And then when I finish, I just take my trigger off and I do that, and the corner comes out beautifully. So now what I'm doing is I'm using the Serrite Edge cordless hot knife. This thing is phenomenal. You don't have a cord on it, and it heats up so fast and cuts synthetic fabrics beautifully, and that cut edge will not unravel easily. And that tempered cutting glass on the bottom side basically transfers all the heat to the fabric and makes that knife glide effortlessly through the fabric. Great combo package. We also have an edge hot knife that is corded that works great. less money, but you still have to contend with an electrical cord. So it's up to you. This is the right side of the fabric. We marked it right. We want to fold each of the corners in so the right sides are facing each other. So let's start with this easy one, which is just a 90-degree corner. And all I want to do, I'll try to position it so you can see it, is fold it so the edge is flush along here and we're right to our peak. And I usually just clip it so that when I take it to the sewing machine, I don't have to think about, did I fold it the right direction? Even if I need to make adjustments, I can do that there. So now this one is the right side of the fabric. So it goes like this, and we'll do the same thing for all of them. I'll show you the smaller one after we get the other two put together. This is that smaller one. This is the right sides, and we'll just do that and clip it in place. And now let's take it to the machine. We want to make sure that we put the needle in center position because we definitely want to sew a 1/2 inch from the edge of the fabric. So I'm going to use my magnetic guide and put it on the 1/2 inch of the needle plate, which indicates exactly where a 1/2 inch is, as long as the needle's in the center position. And let's start with this one. It's the closest to the machine. So we just kind of position the fabric so it folds nicely. Like that, like that. We can move the clip out of the way now. And what we want to do is we want to start so that we're going perfectly parallel with whatever the edge is. So I start sewing here at the top, and I will sew off, do some reversing. This is the only stitch that's going to hold each of the corners, so you got to make sure you do quite a bit of reversing. And then we'll sew all the way down parallel with that edge and do reversing at the bottom. And that one is now complete. So that's what you should get. So now let's do the smaller one, which is a little bit different than all the others. Okay, so this smaller one, now notice that the stripes aren't parallel with this edge. That's because this is irregular, so don't be alarmed at that. We want to sew parallel to this edge, and we want to sew completely off of the fabric. Now I know that seems weird, but basically just you have to imagine, okay, this sewing like that. So I pull it up, 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 and I'm going to start right there. Keep it parallel to the cut edge, reversing there, and sew all the way to the bottom and reverse here. So this is the one that's a little bit weird. This small one is the weirdest of all of them. So that's what you should get.
We'll use the foam to cut the bottom plate. Then we'll show you how to install a zipper in the bottom side of it.
This is cushion underlining material. It's inexpensive and it's available in a few colors. This is black, obviously. If you notice, you can see my fingers on the back side here. It's because there are really small holes in this, which allows a breathability for cushions, which is sometimes important. And it's a little bit sticky, so it's pretty good stuff. We also have a super grip that doesn't move at all. Or you could make the bottom side all out of your decorative fabric, which would look phenomenal. But obviously the bottom is not going to be seen. So I want to take my bottom of the foam and lay it directly on top of the bottom plate. That's what this is. And then what I like to do, since my edges are straight, now we want this plate for these quick and easy irregular cushions to be 1/4 inch larger than the bottom side of our foam. So notice I'm marking over 1/4 inch. And I like to just mark the corners like this since they're straight edges. So now I'll move the foam, and all I need to do is mark from mark to mark, going past those marks like this with my scriball pencil. We are going to be sewing a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and that will shrink up this bottom plate slightly after it's been sewn, which should put the stitch right on the edge of the foam. So this is the inside because the foam was on top. And we know that this is the front, so I'm going to put F here. And then we're going to cut this out with scissors. There's no reason to use a hot knife because this fabric doesn't unravel.
This is number 5 coil zipper by Linzip. Now I could just have it go down here like this and that would work, but it's easier to get the foam in kind of if you go to corner, but I don't like my zipper going right in the corner because it makes it harder to transition when I sew my decorative fabric on. So I'm going to go slightly an inch or so past the corner, and I usually cut the zipper a little bit long by an inch or so going off the edge. So this is the right side of the zipper with the teeth facing up. If you look at the bottom side, there are no teeth. We want to put double-sided tape on the side with the teeth facing up. Now it's important to use a good quality seam stick basting tape, and this is a 1/4 inch wide seam stick basting tape for canvas and upholstery. It is an acrylic glue and not a rubber-based glue, so it doesn't yellow in the sun and has just about the right stickiness for upholstery applications like this. If you use the junk stuff, which is usually rubber-based, it'll yellow like crazy and it doesn't stick as well, or it may stick too much. So this is the perfect stuff. Get it at Sailrite. I'm going to peel off the transfer paper, revealing the glue, and we're going to baste it down. Now, one of the reasons that I would highly recommend seam stick for a job like this is because we're going to be basting the top plate, the decorative fabric, to this bottom plate, and we want all the corners to come out the same. And if you don't use double-sided tape, that can be a tricky task. So even though I've sewn a lot of cushions, I will still be using it. I'm going to try to put this on here straight. If it's helpful for you to mark a line, you can go ahead and do that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be as straight as possible on the underside. Make sure the teeth are facing down. This is the inside of the back plate, so this is where the foam will rest on top. I'm going to set my stitch length to about 4 millimeters, which is what I'll sew for the entire cushion. 4 or 5 millimeters works fine. My teeth are here, I can feel them even though they are down. I'm going to start with my presser foot, this side of the presser foot up against the teeth, and that means that my fabric will fall right there on the center foot, so I'll just try to keep it at that locale. Probably going to move my needle to the right to get closer to that stitch. I think that looks good, and we'll do a little bit of reversing here at the beginning, and then we'll sew down this side of the zipper's flange. When we get to the end, we'll do some reversing and we'll do the same thing to the other side of the zipper. So I'm going to pull it out. I finished that one. And if you sew on the same side of the presser foot, you don't have to move your needle to the opposite side, and then your stitch will be in the same spot. So let me show you. If I do this, and if I start from the opposite end, then my needle is in the perfect spot. If you do it starting on the same end, you have to move your needle to the other side. So repeat the process here. Okay, here I've cut some of the cushion underlining fabric to 2 inches wide. That's just typically what I do, and I've made the length, it's probably 9 inches. It's way too long. And all I do is fold this in half. What I'm trying to do here is create a pocket for the slider to zip into. And this is the wrong side because this says inside. So what I'd want to do, I like to put it on either this end or this end. I'm going to put it on this end. And I like it to run into the zipper like this and run off the edge of the fabric, so the zipper would zip in here and this would protect the zipper. I want to have at least 1.5 inches on the short side, and I like this to be perpendicular to the length of the zipper. Okay, we'll just start right on this end, and I just want to create a nice slit in the middle. Now, I know this is a dirty zipper approach, there's just a raw edge, but this stuff doesn't unravel. And this is the underside of my cushion. So I don't know if you can see that, but we're just revealing the zipper and trying to slit it right over the teeth. We're going to slit it all the way through because we are going to have a pocket here that protects the zipper. Okay, so that's done. Okay, we want our slider, you can see this is our slider. I'm going to try to position it so you can see it, to always be zipping towards whatever pocket it's going to go into. We could put a pocket on both ends, but this is going to be zipping this direction and it'll hide inside of this. So this goes down here, which means we have to put the zipper on from this end. So to do that, all you got to do is separate the teeth by a few inches, like that. And I think this is a locking slider, which means you have to pull on the tab to get it to go on. It's kind of a pain. It's not necessary for a cushion, but that's the size that I wanted. So I put it on like that, I get it started, and hopefully it's fairly even. Pull on the slider. There we go, I think I got it. There we go. So it took a little bit of effort, but we got it. We'll put that in the middle position and leave it there. I'm going to go ahead and put a row of basting tape down the center of this, and then that way it stays folded in half. And then what I'm going to do is probably put one on each side, here and here, so it doesn't move once I have it positioned. I just love basting tape. Okay, and then we'll position this like we talked about earlier, right about there, in line with our zipper. We're going to take it over here and we're going to sew it here, and sew across here, and sew up here, but leave this side open. My needle's already in the right position, so I'm just going to start here, and we'll do a little bit of reversing here. We don't want this to come loose, so that should do it. We're going to sew down till we reach the edge of the fabric. And then I'm sewing very, very close to the raw edge, because this stitch I don't want it to show up when I do my final sewing. And I'm going to sew over those teeth. This is a very small zipper, so I don't really have to worry about needle deflection. I get to here, I bury the needle with the needle coming up slightly, just pivot it around, and we'll sew down this side, and we'll do reversing here. And that creates a very nice pocket. Okay, we're going to trim this off. Now remember, we have our zipper over here, but we're going to just cut right through that zipper. And I usually don't use my good scissors for cutting through zippers. This is still a pretty good pair of scissors, but they don't cost much. So that's what we get there. Now over here on this side, since we have our slider on, we're going to cut through this as well to make this flush following the edge of the fabric. And we will be sewing our decorative fabric onto this, which will close up that zipper. We have not done that here. This is still open.
We're going to baste the decorative fabric to the bottom plate, then we'll sew them together.
This is our bottom plate. Our puller is facing up. This says inside. So this is the outside surface of the underside. We're going to put double-sided tape, seam stick, 1/4 inch basting tape for canvas and upholstery along all of the edges. Very important to use an acrylic glue instead of a rubber-based glue, or rubber-based glues will yellow. And this glue sticks perfectly and doesn't really gum up the needle. Now you want to keep it close to the edge, because we don't want to sew through this tape at all, because if you do, then your double-sided tape will show up when the cushion is turned right side out. That's why we use a 1/4 inch size instead of anything larger. We're going to peel off the transfer paper, revealing the glue along the front edge. There's no right edge to start with, but I like to do that. And we're going to peel off this side as well. We're going to start with this corner here. One of the main reasons that we use double-sided tape is to make sure that the corners all line up. And if they don't, you can readjust it. Whereas if you took it to a sewing machine trying to line it up and started sewing, if they didn't line up in the end, you may have problems. So this seam allowance should fall right on the corner like that. And then we want to baste so this edge is matched up. Now don't pull on one fabric more than the other, because you can stretch it. You want to put it down rather gently. And if you need to, like, see this corner is slightly off. So what I need to do is I need to pull a little bit more, or cause a few little wrinkles in my top material so that I can match it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my finger there, and I'm going to introduce a little bit of slack and put my finger here, a little bit of slack, put my finger there, and then that shrinks this up a little bit so that that corner can fall in the right spot, which is right there. So that's perfect. Now let's make sure it's basted down well, because this side came up a little bit. Good. Got that one done. Let's do this one. So I come around here and I will put that there and match up this edge, being careful not to pull it more, and we'll see if we come to the corner over here, and if we don't, we can shrink or stretch as much as we need to. Hope you can see that. There we go. There we go. Almost there. Oh yeah, look at that. That one's going to come out perfect the way we basted it, because it's right to the edge of the fabric. So I'm going to make sure this stays down well, and we're going to go all the way around, and we'll come to the last corner. The last corner will tell you the total truth whether or not everything is coming out perfect. So let's just keep doing this. This is my last corner, and you can see that we're off a little bit. No big deal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the beginning, which is right here, and I'm going to actually pull on my decorative fabric this time, slightly stretching it a little bit, and we'll put it down there, and then I'll put my finger there, pull a little bit more, put it down there, and then come over here. So we've pulled a little bit here, and let's see what the difference is. Oh yeah, look at that. We're almost coming up to it perfectly. Does it have to be perfect? No, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's got to be really close. And as you can see, the double-sided tape basically gives us the opportunity to make adjustments like that. So we want that to come close to that corner like that, and then we'll base down this one. Now this is the bias of the fabric. You can tell that because of the stripe, so you can easily pull this one. So you want to be careful about not pulling it too much. So we just want to basically finish this last side. I'll come over here and base this one down, and then just make sure that this one rests down there like that. And look at that. We got all the corners matched up pretty good. They're not perfect, but it's gonna come out to be a beautiful cushion. Sometimes it's helpful to create a slit that goes no deeper than your seam allowance of a 1/2 inch. And I don't want to cut into my stitches. I just want to cut beside my stitches, whether it be on the left side or the right side. And then that allows the fabric to take that turn with a little bit more gracefulness. And we can either splay this down, which I'll probably do like that when I sew through it, and we'll be able to sew around that. Now, not all corners require that, but sometimes it does. We're going to start at this corner. It doesn't really matter which one you start at. I've got my magnetic guide at a 1/2 inch. I'm going to splay my seam allowance out like this, and I'm going to start right there at that seam, and we're going to sew a 1/2 inch from the edge, which will mean my needle goes right down into that seam allowance, or where the seam is stitched. And we will not do any reversing here because we're going to run into that. Actually, I am going to do a little bit of reversing here, just because we might not sew past that point. And we're going to sew around the cushion at that 1/2 inch seam allowance, which is pretty easy. Let's show you what we do when we get to this next corner. So here I slit it on this side of the stitch, and I slit it here a little bit to allow it to take that turn, and I'm going to splay this open when I get to it. So watch. Let's open this up, right like that, and make sure that I'm not sewing through any excess fabric. Now I'm in my stitch, and I want my needle to start coming up, so I rotated the balance wheel around by hand. I'm going to lift my foot, and I'm going to pull this fabric back to make sure I don't sew through any excess fabric at the corner. And then now I'm straight away here, and this seam allowance is splayed out, and I lower my foot and I sew down the side. So that's another corner. I'll show you when we get to one more, just to make sure that you have it down pat. Okay, we're coming up to the next corner. Again, I'm going to take this seam allowance and I'm going to splay it back, making sure that I'm not going to sew through any excess fabric that's used in my boxing. I'm going to bury my needle in that seam right there with the needle coming up, and lift my foot, rotate it around, pull the fabric back, make sure that there's no excess fabric there. You can even use a little tool to push the fabric back a little bit, lower my foot, and sew down this side. Now we're coming to this zipper here. You can see it right there. What I want to do is, this side doesn't have that pocket, so it doesn't have an extra stitch. So what I'm going to do is, I can feel that I just went over the teeth. I'm going to reverse probably twice just to make sure that that's secured well, and then we'll continue to sew around.
All that's left now is to insert the foam in the cushion cover that we just made.
We are ready to turn it right side out. So this is the underside, and the inside surfaces are facing up right now. So we have to kind of rip this open a little bit and grab hold of our slider, because this is a locking slider. And we'll push it all the way to that end and open up this end. And we're gonna put turn it right side out. I was gonna put the foam in there. That would be bad. We need to turn it right side out first. We want to push all the corners out and inspect them, and hopefully they look good. Now, if they don't look good, you might have to rip some stitches, and maybe you could make some modifications, but usually that's kind of difficult. So we want them to look good, and then we'll be ready to insert the foam. This is silk film. You don't have to have this, but it does make it easier to insert the foam, and it does create a water barrier that helps to keep water from getting to your cushions. So I'm going to cut it oversized, because we want it to basically have a flap over itself so that we can use a Shop-Vac and suck the foam down. So it is center folded. I have to unfold it, and usually I just use my fingers and rub it to find out if this is the side that is cut or folded. Yeah, this is the side that's cut, so I just pull it apart like this, and we'll lay it on the table nicely. So we want the top side to be facing down, because our zipper's in the back. You want the flap of silk film to be open wherever the zipper is. If your zipper were back here, that's where it'd be open, but we can't make a cushion like this with a zipper in the side. We can only do it on a zipper in the back for this one. So I had to reposition a little bit. Hopefully we're going to have enough here. That and that, because it's got to overlap each other. Yeah, it looks like we're going to be fine. So cover up everything, otherwise it won't suck down, with at least 6 inches or more of overlap. And now we take our Shop-Vac, and it does really require a Shop-Vac. Anything small doesn't really suck well. And you need to open up in the middle where the zipper is, and then close it up and make sure that the Shop-Vac is on the foam. And let's turn it on and see what happens. Pretty cool. Wow. Now I can lift this up, put this in, and that makes it nice and easy. Then when I turn off the vacuum, pull it out. Now I like to get the silk film out of the way of the zipper, because the zipper can get caught up in it, and that also allows for some breathability. If you're using a dry fast foam, you'd never want to use the silk film like this. But see how I open it up? And now the zipper won't get caught in the silk film, and I still have a little bit of breathability on the bottom side. And you need to position the foam in to the corners. It typically will need some massaging, and sometimes the massaging can take upwards of 5 minutes or more to get it to lay exactly where you want it. Sometimes what I like to do is close up the zipper, and you can still move around the foam with the zipper shut. So let's go ahead and do that. Silk film's out of the way. And here is that little pocket that we created. So watch what happens. Get that silk film out of the way, and the slider can go right in there and all the way in, so that it's protected from your solid surface that you're putting it on. And the corners are already looking like they're lining up pretty good. Everything is falling right on that seam, just like we designed it. We're massaging it all into place. Let's see what the top looks like. Oh yeah, that is looking sharp. Hardly any manipulation was needed at all. Nice. That didn't take long. There's our forward edge.
The reason I did a striped fabric like this is to show you what it would look like with an irregular cushion like this and how the stripes would land on each one of the boxing edges. Obviously, this is the most important edge since this is typically our front of our cushion, even though this is just a random sized cushion. But it looks great, and if I measure it, it should be about a 1/4 inch smaller than the cut size of foam as we discussed earlier. So that's the process.
Coming up next is a materials and tools list. We used a Sunbrella upholstery fabric from Saorite, but we have thousands of great decor and upholstery fabric selections that you can pick from at the Saorite website. Be sure to subscribe to the Saorite DIY YouTube channel for more free tutorial videos like this, and click the bell to be notified of when they come out. If you have any questions about this process or the materials that we used, be sure to give us a call or email us. We're glad to help. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Saorite, thanks for watching.